Thanks so much for having me back, Kara.
You know, these stats, they don't seem to be getting any better. So much worse. In fact, now, what is it? Suicide is the second highest cause of death in teens.
Yeah, and it is heartbreaking. And I think it's all the more so because it's preventable. So it's something that if we talk more about and spread more awareness about, we can do that. We can do what we can do to help and prevent this very, very sad and tragic way to die.
Can we share about some of these other stats? I mean, more people are male, but more women still attempt suicide.
Yeah, so it's interesting because the overwhelming amount of completed suicides are done by males, but women are 4 times more likely to attempt suicide. And sometimes that might have to do with the method, how lethal it is, in guns versus overdose. But it is an interesting statistic, and it's good to know, you know, just in terms of how we can check in on those people that are around us.
There's been so many cases that you're seeing in high schools and in colleges, and that, you know, that's parents at home just wondering what you can do to make sure that your child is healthy.
Yeah.
And not considering these things because it is just, I mean, kids are going through so much.
Yeah, kids are going through so much, especially coming out of the pandemic, and there's all these articles coming out now. I think the Oregonian had one last month, and the Washington Post had one about the rise of anxiety and depression amongst teenagers. And so it's a very real thing because depression is one of the biggest risk factors in having a suicide attempt. So this is good to talk about, and it's good to know what those risk factors and warning signs are.
Let's share that. What are the biggest risk factors that you see?
Yeah, so I think that the biggest, just to put it out there more globally, any big changes in personality or behavior that you notice that are alarming, pay attention to that. You know, I think that that's the one thing that I'd want people to take away from this is pay attention to the people around you and pay attention to changes in behavior. And it's not always the same changes in behavior that are the same risk factors for everybody. So it might be changes in the amount that the person wants to socialize, or how much, if they're sleeping more, angry, irritable. But sometimes it can be something more surprising, like somebody just seems artificially happy and it just seems off to you, and you know that they're going through a lot because there's precipitative factors too that can increase somebody's risk for suicide. So if they've just recently undergone a divorce or the death of a loved one and they're acting off, check in with them.
What about with even kids and just even small mentions of wanting to harm themselves or whatever? At what point do you bring in the conversation about suicide if maybe it hasn't even been mentioned on that end?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I'm so glad that you asked this because I think that there's a lot of misinformation around this. I think a lot of parents are worried that if they ask the question or they say suicide, they might plant the seed into a child's mind that hadn't otherwise been there, and that's just simply not the case. That's not what research shows. The best thing you can do if you're concerned, whether it's a subtle concern, I don't know, something's off with my child, or they're saying they want to hurt themselves, is ask about it. There's nothing better that you can do for your child other than ask about it directly and then see what they say. Listen openly, don't judge them, make it safe for them to share what is going on for them.
I'd assume though, even in that moment, if they mention suicide, it's straight to a therapist or someone else who could help, right? How do you even address that conversation?
Yeah, I mean, I think that I think therapy is a great idea, especially if there's ongoing concerns that you have with your child. But before we even go there, it's just exploring the conversation. So asking them, how long have you been feeling this way? Is there anything that's going on in your life that I don't know about that's making you feel this way? Telling them it's okay for them to feel this way, that you're not judging them in any way and they're not in trouble in any way. Sharing some of your own struggles in the past if that's relevant for you. So creating this cushion, this environment for your child is really important. And then it's the, okay, what can we do to support you ongoingly? Let's get a therapist. Let's keep on checking in with each other.
You used to hear the statistic that it was very, very common, or uncommon, I should say, that there was no warning signs, there was no letter, there was no anything, but that's not the case as much anymore.
Yeah, I mean, I know, so you hear stories, and I think there was one recently where people will say there was a suicide, and it's so tragic, and the people around this person didn't have warning signs, and that does happen sometimes, but I think the majority of people do show some signs, and I think sometimes it's so uncomfortable for a lot of people to address, or people don't have the words to say, so they don't necessarily pay attention to it. But I think, again, it's like that take-home message. If something feels off, ask the question, check in.
What do you think are some of the misnomers?
I think, well, so it's one of the big ones that I hear all the time in my clinical practice from parents is, I don't want to bring up suicide. I don't even really want to say that word because I'm worried that if I say it, it's going to get them thinking about it. And that, again, is just not the case. If you're worried, you're concerned, especially if you're hearing things, ask the question. And actually, by doing that, we're giving to whomever we're asking that question to, the biggest gift, because we're destigmatizing it. We're making it okay to talk about. And I hear that one all the time.
There's so many resources out there. We're going to put those on our website. But really quick, for those who have a loved one or know somebody and want to reach out as support because they have a loved one that passed away from suicide, what are some ways that you can comfort, you can approach it with them?
Yeah, you mean if...
As far as comfort, as far as if someone did, you know, as far as a loved one committing suicide and then helping them out?
I think just if it's a friend and you know, depending on the situation and the relationship, but again, it's just asking the question, how are you doing? How can I best support you? I think that's such a good question that oftentimes we don't, it's the simple questions. If we just put it out there and we make it safe for the other person to share, that's huge. And also, you know, like there's a new crisis line, 988, which is very exciting. That's a new resource that you can call or text if you think somebody is in danger of hurting themselves, or if somebody is in danger of hurting themselves or having suicidal thoughts. It's a 24-hour hotline. And so that's a good thing to pass on too. That
phone number. We're going to make sure to put that phone number on our website.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for
all
having
of this
me.
information today. We're going to have more information about Dr. Leah on our website at KATU.com. Stay right there. Afternoon Live. We'll be right back.